and that the frac fluid itself goes reasonably well with tomatoes and mozzarella, the controversy surrounding shale will simmer down. In a few short years, opposition will be limited to two groups: environmentalists who are opposed to any petroleum developments on principle, and local groups who don't perceive any personal benefits. This is not an inconsequential slice of the American electorate, but it is probably only about 10% of the population. So American shale is not only a done deal, but it is also about to accelerate considerably. What is even more notable about shale is that it will remain American for quite some time. It is extremely unlikely that the shale technologies will be applied en masse anywhere outside of North America before 2035. Why? Shale's success reflects many features of the American system that we have already discussed. There are four factors that must exist simultaneously for a country to birth a shale industry in short order. 1. Huge, deep capital markets. You have to throw a lot of money at a fracking project to get results. As with everything else about shale, there is no average, but costs can be extreme in typically everything. Roads, pipes, drills, and labor sufficiently skilled to drill a mile beneath their feet has to be paid up front. Rigs, whose rates include labor, rented anywhere from $10,000 to $100,000 a day. An easy well might only take 8 days, but difficult wells can be 5 times that. A low-end figure is usually in the range of $6 million per well. Until costs are recovered, any investment that a firm puts into a shale project cannot be redeployed. Think of it like buying a house. Until you have paid your mortgage off, it is difficult to gather the financial resources to get a second one. A good shale oil well only produces about 75 barrels a day across the span of 20 years. Even when you consider that a third of that output will be in the first year or 3, it still takes at least a year, with oil prices at $100, to hit break even. This financial factor puts an onerous limitation on where a shale industry can develop. The broader economy must boast a financial sector that is so rich, liquid, and stable that all those scores of billions of dollars of committed funds do not crimp credit availability for the rest of the economy. You think shale is somewhat controversial now. Imagine if the American credit system were sufficiently constrained that a successful shale industry meant your mortgage payment increased by half. That's the net effect of an increase in rates from 5% to 9.5%. If the local national credit pool isn't absolutely huge, shale just isn't a viable industry. Luckily for the Americans, as the world's premier capital safe haven, they have the largest, deepest, and most liquid capital market in the world. Europe could have pulled it off until their financial crisis struck. With the exception of Japan, which has no shale, there just isn't enough money anywhere else in the world to generate a robust shale industry. 2. Highly skilled labor. Drilling a winding shaft into a complicated variable density geology several thousand feet underground in order to inject a pressurized fluid that will precision crack a rock formation in real time so that the hydrocarbons trapped within are funneled up the well shaft is every bit as hard as it sounds. Moreover, every single well, even 2 wells on the same drilling pad, is different. This is not a job for the faint of heart or the faint of skill. Each well crew has to know precisely what they are doing and has to be in command of skills ranging from engineering to geology to chemicals to fluid dynamics. Different types of frac fluid have to be used for different geologies. This is not a task for a handful of state-owned oil thugs who get their jobs as part of a nationalization program, but for people with years of experience who benefit from the trust of their superiors to make adjustments as they go. Each well requires a crew of high-skilled petroleum engineers and support staff able to operate in a variety of environments with minimal supervision. But there will never be shale gushers. A successful industry will be drilling thousands of wells a year. That means you need not one energy firm, or even dozens, but hundreds. And you also need thousands of extremely capable petroleum engineers. Only the United States, with its tradition of small businesses, low barriers to entry, and an advanced educational system that specializes in outside-the-box thinking, can generate the necessary labor pool for a shale industry to thrive. Over the life of the global petroleum industry, some 5.5 million wells have been drilled, 4 million of which were completed within the United States. In the past 5 years, 99% of the horizontal wells drilled globally are in the United States. Source data for specific well counts is notoriously wobbly. As in many states, reporting is voluntary, and drillers do not necessarily have to disclose whether they are drilling for, or end up producing, oil or natural gas. The data in this paragraph is courtesy of GHK Companies, one of the major shale players in the United States. Every other country might have the required staff to tinker with shale, but no one at present can even attempt to make it an industry. 3. A legal structure that rewards landowners for their participation. Any attempt at a shale sector is manpower and equipment intensive. Across a shale basin that is many tens of thousands of square miles, there will be significant pressure on local infrastructure, most notably roads, as well as chronic demand for all of the items ranging from foodstuffs to entertainment to lodging that come with any highly localized economic boom. The cost of everything from rents to groceries can be reliably counted upon to at least triple, and the traffic and noise from rig crews constantly coming, going, building, breaking, and commuting is far from insignificant. For a shale industry to be successful, local buy-in is absolutely critical, and the best way to make sure that this happens is to give the local community a say in the development process and a slice of the profits. In the United States, roughly 2/3 of all land is privately owned, a legacy of the country's origin as a settler state and the smallholder tradition of the pioneer era. So firms must contract directly with landowners in order to drill. This does more than simply make landowners millionaires. Typical contracts give leaseholders a 12.5% revenue share. It also pours money directly into local government coffers because they can tax both the energy production and the landowner's income and land. To Americans, this might seem obvious, but it is far from normal. In every other country in the world, the national government holds the subsoil rights. Local governments and landowners will not get a dime of direct money, whether from taxes, development fees, or production royalties, from the actual shale production. Only the national government gets that. It also means that national governments decide when and where energy production happens regardless of the wishes of the landowners, much less the local homeowners association. In places like the Middle East and the former Soviet Union, where desert and tundra drilling doesn't impact a local population, this isn't so critical a factor. But in China, Latin America, and Europe, this factor alone dooms potential shale industries. 4. A pre-existing natural gas collection, transport, and distribution infrastructure. The final requirement has to do with the nature of the output. Shale wells produce not just oil, but oil and natural gas, and herein lies a problem. Oil is a liquid, and so can be trucked, barged, railed, or piped anywhere you want. The multitude of transport options allow shale oil production to be very quickly monetized. And if you're not quite ready for it, you can simply pump it directly into a tanker truck until the pipe infrastructure gets up and running. Well over 90% of the active well work going on in the United States right now is looking for oil and associated petroleum liquids, with ethane, propane, and butane being among the more recognizable, that are nearly as easy to store and move. Natural gas, however, is, well, a gas. It cannot be trucked, barged, or railed efficiently except under extreme pressure, which poses extreme costs for additional equipment and not insignificant safety issues for all involved. It also cannot easily be stored. At standard pressure, it takes 1,400 cubic feet of natural gas to generate the power of 1 cubic foot of crude. Unlike oil, which is omnipresent in usage, natural gas suffers from the chicken-egg conundrum so far as transport is concerned. A shale natural gas industry requires an infrastructure that links up pre-existing pressurized pipeline networks to pre-existing points of demand. If you do not have that, you not only have to build it from scratch, but build the actual demand from scratch as well. The same holds true for other types of infrastructure. Shale wells require hundreds of truck trips, and truck trips require, well, roads. Shale developments in virgin territory first require the development of a spider web of interconnected transport arteries. In the United States, where energy production has been co-located with populated territories for over a century in places like Pennsylvania, Texas, and Oklahoma, this is already in place. But in most of the rest of the world, energy production has long been in remote, unpopulated areas like the North Sea, the Arabian Desert, or Siberia. Europe and Argentina have solid systems nearly as good as the Americans on both the infrastructure and pre-existing use questions. Russia and Australia have the long-range transport pipes, but not the grid of roads. Few other locations have either. However you slice it, the answer to the infrastructure question is multi-trillion and multi-decade. Put together, these are exacting requirements. Few places in the world meet more than one of them, and only the United States has all of them.